Picture this, a weapon so reliable it works after being buried in mud, so simple a child can learn to use it in minutes, and so influential it appears on national flags. This isn't science fiction, this is the AK-47, the most produced firearm in human history, with over 100 million units manufactured worldwide. But here's what most people don't know. The AK-47 wasn't designed to be the world's most famous gun. It was created by a tank commander who had never designed a weapon before, born from the desperation of a nation that had just survived the most brutal conflict in human history. Today, we're diving deep into the incredible story of why the AK-47 was created and how this single weapon fundamentally changed the nature of warfare forever. Stay with me, because this story involves Soviet secrets, battlefield innovations, and a design philosophy that would reshape global conflict for the next 75 years. Introduction. Before we get into the full story, let's set the stage. The year is 1941. Nazi Germany has just launched Operation Barbarossa, the largest military invasion in history against the Soviet Union. Soviet forces are being devastated, suffering catastrophic losses. In the chaos of this brutal conflict, a young Soviet tank commander named Mikhail Kalashnikov is wounded in battle. While recovering in the hospital, Kalashnikov hears soldiers complaining about their rifles. The standard-issue Soviet rifles were bolt-action Mosin Nagants, reliable but slow. Meanwhile, German forces were equipped with semi-automatic and automatic weapons that could unleash devastating firepower. The Soviets were outgunned, and Kalashnikov knew it. This moment in a military hospital would spark an obsession that would change history. But to understand why the AK-47 became what it is, we need to understand the world it was born into. Part 1. The problem. Why a new weapon was needed. Let's talk about the state of infantry weapons in World War II, because this is crucial to understanding the AK-47's creation. For most of the war, infantrymen on all sides carried bolt-action rifles. These were accurate and powerful, but they required the soldier to manually cycle the bolt between each shot. This meant a trained soldier could fire maybe 10 to 15 aimed shots per minute. In the trenches of World War I, this was acceptable, but in World War II brought a new kind of warfare: fast, mobile, and close quarters. The Germans recognized this problem early. They developed the Sturmgewehr 44, or STG 44, which translates to Assault Rifle 44. This weapon was revolutionary. It fired an intermediate cartridge, something between a pistol round and a full-power rifle round, and it could fire automatically. This gave German soldiers incredible firepower at close to medium range. The Soviets saw the Sturmgewehr 44 in action and recognized its potential immediately. Soviet military doctrine emphasized mass mobilization and combined arms tactics. They needed a weapon that could be produced in massive quantities, survive the harsh Russian climate, and be simple enough for conscripts with minimal training to use effectively. But there was another factor. The Soviet Union had just endured losses of over 26 million people during the war. Their industrial capacity was damaged, their economy was shattered, and they needed to rebuild their military quickly and cheaply. They couldn't afford complex, expensive weapons that required precision manufacturing. The Soviets needed a gun that embodied a specific philosophy: reliable over accurate, simple over sophisticated, and durable over delicate. They needed a weapon for the masses, not for marksmen. Now here's where the story becomes fascinating. Mikhail Kalashnikov was not a trained weapons designer. He was born in 1919 in Siberia to a peasant family. His education was limited, and by trade he was a mechanic. Before the war, he worked on railroad equipment and then became a tank mechanic in the Red Army. But Kalashnikov had something that formal training couldn't provide. He understood what soldiers actually needed. He had been in combat, he had experienced weapon failures firsthand, and perhaps most importantly, he approached design from a practical, mechanical perspective rather than a theoretical one. While recovering from his wounds in 1941, Kalashnikov began sketching designs for a new submachine gun. His early designs weren't successful, but they caught the attention of military officials who saw potential in this self-taught designer. The Soviet military was actively seeking new weapons designs, and they were willing to consider ideas from unconventional sources. Throughout the mid-1940s, Kalashnikov worked obsessively on rifle designs. He studied captured German weapons, including the Sturmgewehr 44. He analyzed Soviet submachine guns like the PPSH-41. He tested, failed, redesigned, and tested again. The Soviet military held competitions for a new rifle design, and Kalashnikov entered multiple times. What set Kalashnikov apart wasn't just mechanical skill, it was his design philosophy. He later said, "I was probably the most simple-minded of them all. I just kept thinking about making something that would be reliable and simple to use." While other designers pursued technical sophistication, Kalashnikov pursued brutal simplicity. In 1946, he submitted a design that impressed military evaluators. After extensive testing and modifications, the Automat Kalashnikov Model 1947, the AK-47, was officially adopted by the Soviet Army in 1949. So what exactly made the AK-47 different? Why did this particular design become legendary? Let's break down the key features that made it revolutionary. First, the intermediate cartridge, the 7.62 by 39 mm round. This was smaller and less powerful than the full rifle cartridges in bolt-action rifles, but significantly more powerful than pistol rounds. This meant the weapon produced manageable recoil during automatic fire, while still being effective at ranges up to 300 meters, perfect for most infantry combat situations. Second, the operating system. The AK-47 uses a long-stroke gas piston system. When you fire the weapon, some of the expanding gas from the bullet travels through a port in the barrel and pushes a piston which cycles the action. This system is incredibly simple, with few moving parts, and it's very tolerant of dirt, sand, and debris. Third, the loose tolerances. Here's where Kalashnikov's genius really shows. Most precision rifles are manufactured with very tight tolerances, meaning parts fit together precisely. The AK-47 was designed with relatively loose tolerances. This meant that dirt, sand, rust, or ice wouldn't jam the mechanism as easily. The parts had room to move even when contaminated. Fourth, the simplicity of assembly. The AK-47 can be field stripped into its major components without tools in seconds. A soldier could disassemble, clean, and reassemble the weapon in under a minute with minimal training. This was crucial for an army that relied on mass conscription. Fifth, the durability. The AK-47 was built using stamped metal and simple machined parts. The design prioritized strength over weight savings. Early models used machined receivers, but later versions used stamped sheet metal, which was even cheaper and faster to produce while maintaining durability. The result was a weapon that could be buried in mud, frozen in ice, dropped from vehicles, and still fire reliably. Soldiers in Vietnam, Afghanistan, Africa, and countless other conflicts discovered that the AK-47 was nearly indestructible. There are documented cases of AK-47s being recovered after decades of exposure to the elements and still functioning with minimal cleaning. But here's the crucial point. The AK-47 wasn't the most accurate rifle. At long range, Western rifles like the American M16 were superior. The AK-47 wasn't the lightest weapon, and it certainly wasn't the most advanced, but it was the most practical. And in warfare, practical beats perfect every single time. Now let's talk about how AK-47 changed warfare. This is where the story gets really interesting, because the impact went beyond just military tactics. First, the democratization of firepower. Before the AK-47, automatic weapons were generally crew-served machine guns or expensive, complex automatic rifles. The AK-47 put automatic fire capability into the hands of every infantryman. This fundamentally changed infantry tactics. Armies could now employ suppressive fire more liberally, pin down enemy positions more effectively, and control larger areas with fewer soldiers. Second, the proxy war era. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union manufactured AK-47s in staggering numbers and distributed them to Allied nations and revolutionary movements worldwide. East Germany, Poland, China, North Korea, and dozens of other nations began producing their own variants. The Chinese Type 56 alone was produced in the tens of millions. This meant that any insurgent group, revolutionary movement, or government aligned with the Soviet bloc could arm themselves with reliable automatic weapons cheaply and easily. Third, the asymmetric warfare revolution. The AK-47 became the weapon of choice for guerrilla fighters worldwide. In Vietnam, the Viet Cong used AK-47s to devastating effect against American forces. In Afghanistan, Mujahideen fighters used them against the Soviet army, ironically turning Soviet weapons against their creators. In countless African conflicts, insurgencies, and civil wars, the AK-47 became ubiquitous. Why was it so effective for guerrilla warfare? Simple. It required minimal logistics, minimal training, and minimal maintenance. A guerrilla force could cache weapons for months or years, and they would still function. Fighters could learn to use them in hours, and if one broke, replacements were everywhere. Fourth, the economics of conflict. The AK-47 made warfare cheaper. Before its proliferation, equipping an army with modern weapons required significant industrial capacity and resources. The AK-47 and its countless variants flooded global markets. Today, in some regions, an AK-47 can be purchased for less than $100. This low cost made it possible for even poorly funded groups to arm themselves effectively, lowering the barrier to entry for violent conflict. Fifth, the tactical response. The proliferation of the AK-47 forced Western militaries to adapt. The American M16, adopted in the 1960s, was in many ways a response to the AK-47's effectiveness. It emphasized lighter weight and higher accuracy, a different philosophy, but one designed to counter AK-equipped forces. Body armor, vehicle armor, and infantry tactics evolved in response to the widespread availability of automatic fire. The AK-47 also changed the psychology of warfare. The distinctive sound of an AK-47 became a universal signal of conflict. Its presence in a region often indicated instability. Its image became symbolic of revolution, resistance, and armed struggle, which brings us to its cultural impact. Part 5. The Cultural Icon. Beyond the battlefield, the AK-47 became something unique, a cultural icon. Mozambique features an AK-47 on its national flag and coat of arms. Hezbollah incorporates it into their symbol. Revolutionary movements from Latin America to Southeast Asia adopted it as an emblem of resistance. The weapon appears in countless films, video games, and music videos. It's been called the most recognizable object created in the 20th century after the Coca-Cola bottle. This cultural status is deeply ironic for a weapon designed purely for practical military purposes. Mikhail Kalashnikov himself had complex feelings about his creation. In his later years, he expressed regret about the weapon's use by terrorists and criminals, though he defended its original purpose as defending his homeland. He received the Hero of the Russian Federation Award and numerous other honors, but also wrote to the head of the Russian Orthodox Church expressing spiritual torment over the deaths caused by his invention. The AK-47's cultural impact reflects a deeper truth about technology itself. Once a design enters the world, its creator loses control over its use and meaning. Conclusion. So, why was the AK-47 created? It was created because the Soviet Union needed a weapon that matched their military doctrine, their industrial capacity, and their geopolitical reality. They needed something simple, reliable, and mass-producible for an army of conscripts defending their homeland and projecting power during the Cold War. How did it change warfare? It changed warfare by democratizing firepower, enabling guerrilla movements worldwide, lowering the economic barriers to armed conflict, and forcing tactical evolution across all modern militaries. It proved that practical simplicity could be more influential than technical sophistication. But perhaps more importantly, the AK-47 story teaches us something about technology itself. The most impactful innovations aren't always the most advanced or sophisticated. Sometimes the most revolutionary design is the one that solves a real problem in the simplest way possible, the one that works when everything else fails, the one that anyone can use, maintain, and understand. The AK-47 is estimated to have been used in more conflict than any other weapon in history. It's killed more people than any other small arm. Yet, it's also defended more nations and communities than we can count. It represents both the destructive capacity of human ingenuity and our endless drive to solve practical problems. Mikhail Kalashnikov passed away in 2013 at the age of 94. His creation outlived him and will likely continue shaping warfare for generations to come. Whether we view it as a tool of liberation or an instrument of violence, one thing is undeniable: the AK-47 changed the world. Thanks for watching this deep dive into the history and impact of the AK-47. If you found this video educational, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more content on military history, weapon technology, and the forces that shaped our modern world. What's your take on the AK-47's legacy? Do you think its simplicity was truly genius, or has its proliferation caused more harm than good? Let me know in the comments below. I read them all and love hearing your perspectives. Until next time, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next video.